Hello folks and welcome to another Darktable Landscapes video. If you're new to the channel, this is where we process landscape photography mainly, sometimes some nature shots, with the free and open source raw processing software known as Darktable. So if you ever wanted to dip into the world of Darktable and you're a landscape or nature photographer, this is the place to be. So in this video today, we're going to be processing this panorama from the Lake District, Langdale, and let's get going. So the first thing I'm going to do is a little bit of denoising. We're at ISO 640, so it's probably a touch of noise around. Just a matter of turning on the denoise module. So that's pretty straightforward. Likewise, chromatic aberration. Nothing major on this particular shot, I don't think, but maybe some slight fringing around the mountains, which the CA module will take care of for us nicely. And now let's do white balance. So that's the color calibration module. And let's see what the automatic checker does. So we'll click the eyedropper. And that's not bad. So we've got some really warm golden hour sunlight. This is basically sunrise. So you can see how kind of warm this light is already. I just want to keep that warmth. And then we'll enhance this fog from this inversion where cold air has got trapped under a kind of a cap of warmer air and made this lovely fog. So we'll enhance that, we'll give it some glow, and we'll see what else we can do. So that's good for now for the white balance. Okay, now we'll take a quick look at exposure. So the exposure is not bad actually, but we just need a slight bump. Yeah, the auto compensation's kicked in, that's fine. So our sky's a bit bright, so we want to bring that down. We can do that very easily with the exposure module. We've already got one, so we're going to make another one by right-clicking the little double cube button there, and we're going to mask it. So we're going to use a parametric mask, which means using some parameter of the image to make a selection. In this case, the brightness, the G values, the grays. And so let's pop on our mask preview. At the moment, everything is selected because we've made no difference to our parameters, no changes. What we're going to do is we're going to drag up our darks so that we're deselecting them. So you can see how that's immediately making a difference. Just feather that off a little bit. And in fact, what I don't want to do is darken down this fog. So I'm going to switch over to a drawn and parametric mask, which means we can use both a parameter and drawing a shape to define where our mask is going to be applied. And we'll click this gradient tool and we'll say we only want everything above this line to be affected. And we may just give it a little bit of a tilt. There we go. So now we're just applying these values above that line. There we go. Let's turn off our preview again. And now if we make a change, you'll see that it's only affecting that part. So that transition starts to look a little weird here in the clouds. So the first thing we're going to do is feather it. And we'll obviously make it less of a dramatic change. Then what I might also do is change the blend mode of the mask from normal to multiply. See how that's kind of really made a really strong effect. So we'll also drop our opacity right down as well. You can see how that's darkened and added some drama to the sky. So a final tweak of these values. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Okay, and now we'll add some more contrast and do a little bit of color work. So we'll use the color balance RGB module. Pop that on. Let's add some vibrance. The kind of the natural warmth of the sunlight actually is already making things quite kind of vibrant and saturated anyway. So I don't want to go actually too high on this one. But we'll definitely add some contrast. We've got more room for that. It's good. And then we'll add a little bit of perceptual saturation grading, more in the shadows, less in the midtones, and just a hint in the highlights. And now we can do a little bit of fine tuning on the contrast. So drop our shadows a touch, boost our mids, and pull back our highlights. We'll go for drama on this one, I think. That's good. Okay, now we'll do some color grading. While I find the module, please do hit the subscribe button. And if you like what you see, you'll get more of it. So for color grading, we want RGB primaries. And the channel also has just managed to accumulate enough view hours to allow me to enable memberships and that kind of thing. So if you want to buy me a coffee, and there are a few people who need a coffee more than landscape photographers on top of a hill at 3 o'clock in the morning, then feel free to stick in a super thanks or a super chat. I'm not sure what they call them actually on YouTube these days, but you can buy me a coffee if you want to via that system. But for now, let's carry on doing our color grading. So let's move the red hue a little bit this way, but reduce the purity a little bit so it doesn't get too strong. So 18. And let's have a look, maybe a slight shift in the greens towards the kind of cyan end. Drop the purity a touch as well. And blue's just another slight shift towards cyan. If you go really far with the blue, this becomes really kind of orange and cyan, which is a bit on the nose. So just add a little bit of a hint of that. And drop our blue purity a little bit as well. So you can see we've shifted things from this kind of yellowy green with brown to more of a red brown, if you like, more of a natural kind of dead bracken brown, which I think works quite nicely. And we've got some nice natural haze, and I always think it's easy to overdo haze removal. But when you're doing landscape photography, haze is an important way that the brain kind of knows things are farther away. We know that things get hazy the farther away they are. So I don't want to completely remove that because it is adding depth. But I will just bring out some of the detail in these back hills, fells, I should say, really. So I'll just drop this down to say 0.1, something like that. Just a little hint, just to pull things out a bit. Yeah, that's okay. And let's see if we can give this kind of fog, this inversion fog, a bit of glow. So for that, we will use, let's say, low pass filter. I'm going to turn this on. It's going to blur everything. I'm going to blur it even more now by changing the radius. If you match the radius to the megapixel value of your camera's sensor, which in this case is 24, you can see obviously that's crazy. It's super blurred, but we're going to fix that now. So let's go for a parametric mask. We'll change the blend mode to soft light, and you can see that's removed some of the blur, but things are really, really, really intense. So we're going to drop that down. Let's just say 50, 60% for now, but then we're also going to mask this just to the brighter tones. So again, we've got our luminance channel here, which lets us select tones. And you can see the mask is slightly transparent because we've dropped the opacity. Let's just remove it from the darker tones. There we go. Pull it back for a little bit of softening. So there we go. We're now mainly selecting the sky, the highlighted areas, and the fog itself. Give it some feather so it's not too stark. Just turn that off. Now, as is always the case, when you've masked something off, the effect is less strong, so you can always kind of bring it back until you think it looks good. Yeah, that's pretty good, I think. You can also adjust things like the brightness of the effect, adding saturation, which actually isn't too bad in this case because it's adding some colour to this fog one. I'm not going to go too strong with it. Here we go, 1.2. If you double click, it will reset it. So yeah, 1.2 is not bad. Yeah, okay. Now let's do a little bit of light shaping. So a vignette, I think, first and foremost. The sun is obviously coming from the left here and hitting this hill and the Langdale Pikes here and these smaller hills here. And we've got a nice area of darkness here. So let's accentuate that with a vignette that's kind of centered around here. So for a vignette, I like to use the exposure module again. Right click for a new instance, draw and mask with an ellipse. And so we'll pop the ellipse about there, stretch it out a bit. There we go. And now we can reduce, well, actually wait there, if we just turn our mask preview on, we've selected this area, we want to invert that. So click the reverse polarity button here, a little minus that turns into a plus. And now we can drop our exposure. It's way too much, so we'll give it much more feather. We'll shift and roll our mouse wheel over this central ellipse. Got a really subtle fade. You open it up a little bit more that way. It's maybe a touch too much. Just bring it back up a little bit. Yeah, it's not bad. It's certainly adding some drama. Okay, I think that's good. And now we'll add some sharpening. So we use the diffuse and sharpen module, and we'll use the presets. So we'll right click anywhere on the bar there, and avoiding the buttons naturally. And the first thing we're going to do is add sharpen demosaicing no anti-alias filter, because my camera doesn't have an anti-aliasing filter. Most of them don't these days, but do check your manual or online. And let's make another instance of this module. So right click again, and this time we'll choose lens deblur medium. We'll just zoom in to see the effects of these. You can see that sharpening taking effect. That's nice. And one more module, we will use local contrast fine, which is always a little bit strong for my taste. So I'll use the uniform mask, this circle icon at the bottom, and then just drop the opacity of the whole effect. Let's say about 60%. There we go, just some local contrast, that's nice. And then finishing touches, just kind of have a look. In fact, I always recommend doing your processing and then going away, having a cup of coffee or whatever, and then come back and see what you think, because it's quite often you'll see something glaringly obvious, like it's too saturated or something like that. I think this probably has slightly too saturated. It may just be my monitor. I may just drop the global vibrance a touch. Your mileage may vary. Obviously, it's down to personal taste as well, but I don't like to be too saturated. Otherwise, I think that's pretty good. Okay, so here's our before and after. Standard issue kind of low contrast raw. And really all we've done is just kind of bring out what was already there, which is really what we're aiming for when we do landscape photography. It's much easier to just enhance an already nice shot due to the conditions than it is to try and add nice things in like golden light or fog or anything like that. So, you know, it means you have to sleep in the car and jump up a hill at 4 o'clock in the morning in the dark. But when you get a scene like this with an inversion in the valley and golden sunlight, it makes it all worth it. It doesn't happen every time. In fact, it probably doesn't happen most times, but the times when it does happen, keep you going for when you get really special conditions like this. This particular shot I've sold a few of, and it looks amazing printed, kind of huge, like a couple of meters long. Makes a really nice centerpiece on a wall. And it was all worth it in the end. All the blood, sweat and tears, jumping tripods up hills. Okay, so there's our finished image. Hope you like this one as always. Do like and subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment. If you've got any suggestions for other things you'd like to see on the channel. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.